Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the District of Summerland regular evening meeting for Monday, April 25th, 2022. I will call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. My name is Councillor Erin Traynor, and I am filling in for Mayor Tony Boot, who cannot be here tonight due to a family emergency. I will now read the required introduction. This meeting is being recorded live and is streaming. All representations to council, written or verbal, will form part of the public record and will be available to the public for viewing electronically or as a written record. Members of the public may access the meeting or participate in the following ways. Number 1, attend council chambers in person. Individuals who wish to attend council chambers in person may do so by registering in advance of the meeting by contacting the corporate officer at corporateofficer@summerland.ca to ensure there is enough space in council chambers. Number 2, watch the meeting live or recorded. Individuals who wish to watch the meeting may view it on the District of Summerland YouTube channel, youtube.com/District of Summerland, live or recorded. Number 3, register in advance to speak during the meeting. Members of the public who wish to provide comment during the public comment opportunities found under items 8 and 15 are asked to register in advance by contacting the corporate officer at corporateofficer@summerland.ca with the following information: name, civic address, method of participation, in person, telephone, or Zoom. Further details will be provided upon registration. 4, request to speak during the meeting. Those who have not registered in advance but wish to speak during the public comment opportunities may be given the opportunity, time permitting. After the mayor has provided everybody who has pre-registered with an opportunity to comment, the floor will be open to those in council chambers and those on the conference line. The conference line can be accessed by dialing 778-907-2071 and entering meeting ID 506-489-9374 with the passcode 485186. All right, on to number 2, introduction of late items. Corporate officer, do we have anything tonight? No? Okay. All right, number 3, approval of agenda. I'm looking for a motion to approve tonight's agenda. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Carried. Okay, number 4, adoption of the minutes. Just looking for a motion to consider the minutes from the April 11th public hearing and the April 11th regular evening council meeting. Moved by Councillor Van Elfen, Council Holmes, all in favor? Carried. Okay, number 5, bylaws from the public hearing. There's none tonight. Okay, number 6 is the mayor's report, and Mayor Boot has asked me to read her report. So it's written in first person, so I will change it to third person. So Mayor Boot, I hope everyone, it's gonna mess me up. You know who I'm talking about. Okay. She hopes that everyone had an enjoyable Easter weekend, whether you stayed in town or you traveled to be with friends and family. This past Saturday, she had the pleasure of attending the Canadian Home Builders Excellence Awards at the Delta Grand in Kelowna and seeing Summerland's own Edge Hill Homes win for their work on the Hampton, a private residence in our community. Congratulations again to Nick and Teresa Brom and their team. The Summerland Museum hosted a Pro D Day event for 6 to 12-year-olds today called Wild World. This event, which was an opportunity to learn about the unique plants and animals that can be found in and around Summerland, wrapped up a week's worth of events celebrating Summerland's 13th annual Earth Week. Lisa Scott of the Okanagan-Similkameen Invasive Species Society oversaw the 16th Earth Day planting event at the Summerland Wastewater Treatment Plant in Trout Creek. It was a beautiful day to be out preparing the planting area and getting plants into the ground. 40 volunteers of all ages participated this year. Many hands make light work. In the afternoon, Mayor Boot also attended the Earth Day Fair organized by First Things First Okanagan. There were plenty of things to see and do, including an EV vehicle show and shine, live entertainment by the talented Kyle Anderson, and a short walk in the Summerland ORL branch on the science of climate change and what we can do as residents to help our community adapt and build resistance. Sorry, that was a short talk, not a short walk. Several businesses, local farmers, and nonprofits were on hand to provide information on various aspects of what we as consumers can do. At the fair, Mayor Boot also learned about the progress being made in the second year of the Indigenous Food Plant Garden being installed at the Summerland Research and Development Center. This initiative, headed by 2 university students, Dana Johnson of Gixon Ancestry and Kyle Clark, who is Métis, included 20 plant species that are culturally significant to the Syilx people and Okanagan people. Thank you to all the district staff for another week of excellent, thought-provoking events. Thanks to local residents for your interest in helping our town become more resilient to our changing climate. Tomorrow, Mayor Boot will head to Salmon Arm to attend the Southern Local Interior Government Association 2022 convention, and that runs through to Friday. And that's all that she's got. All right, moving on to number 7, the CAO's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are working on potholes. The asphalt plants are open now, and we finally have access to hot mix for pothole filling and patching. Road maintenance is happening throughout the next month, including sweeping, line and crosswalk painting, patching and filling of potholes, as well as sidewalk grinding. With the price of oil compounded by inflationary pressures, we are experiencing about a 30% increase in our asphalt pricing, so we are monitoring our budgets closely. We'll be sending some Facebook posts in the coming weeks to make the public aware of the maintenance work and to ask that residents be extra cautious when driving in areas where crews are working. The Washington Avenue paving is also anticipated to take place the next week or so, and portions of Canyon View Road will also be paved soon once the water main replacement is complete. With public assent now received on Giants Head Road, we are focused on that project as well, with the intent of work being done later this summer and fall. Due to unseasonably cold weather in the week of April 11th, we had to delay turning on the irrigation to agricultural properties until the following week, unfortunately. However, we did turn on our 28 fill stations throughout the district so that farmers needing bulk water for their operations would be able to use those devices to get it. Individual farmers who are willing to take the risk and responsibility for turning on their local water service were able to do so on an as-request basis as per the usual process. It is that time of year again when bears are coming out. It has been reported to us that some residents have been putting garbage cans out before the appointed time on collection days. So on the evenings of April 20th and 21st, district bylaw staff patrolled collection routes and put notices on garbage cans that had been put out the night before. The notice included tips on managing bear attractants and highlighted that putting out the garbage before 5 a.m. on a collection day is an offense under district bylaws. And just in terms of the actual number of the notices that were put out on the garbage cans that were put out too early, 265 notices in those 2 days. And the guys will be out there again a couple days this week as well on that public education campaign. It's impossible not to notice the colorful Memorial Park playground installation is underway. Just a reminder that Community Volunteer Day is set for May 14th at 8 a.m. to install engineered wood fiber surfacing. Residents can email recreation@summerland.ca or phone 250-494-0447 to sign up. We're excited about our recent grant approval for phases 3 and 4 of the Giants Head Mountain Trails redevelopment project. We were one of 57 communities across British Columbia to receive funding, with over $1.2 million from federal and provincial governments, with the district contributing the remainder. These final phases will include road and washroom improvements, construction of the grind trail to the top of the mountain, remedial planting and invasive weed management, and erosion control measures. We have learnings from the first two phases that we will apply as we work on the next phases, and we'll be coming to council later in May with a report to confirm next steps on the project. We have begun work on the Eneas Creek flood restoration work, including the Centennial Trail along Peach Orchard Road. The environmental conditions for the work are very specific, and all work is occurring under the observation of a qualified environmental professional who is on site during our operations. Residents are reminded the current permissions from the province were granted to ensure protection of the existing infrastructure, including the road from the upcoming freshet. We hope to be able to restore the safety of the trail as well through this work. And when this portion of the trail can be opened again for public use, we'll ensure that folks are notified through Facebook. Finally, just a reminder that Fortis has a planned power outage Friday, April 29th, 11 p.m. to April 30th, 6 a.m. We are supporting awareness through a media release, Facebook posts, emails to critical customers, and sandwich boards put out days before the outage so people can plan for the event. And with that, I conclude. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you, CAO Stat. Does anyone have any questions from that report? Seeing none, okay, moving on. Number 8, public comment opportunity. Corporate Officer, do we have anyone who wishes to speak tonight?
We have no registered members to speak, no.
Okay, did anyone in the gallery want to speak? No, okay. All right, so development reports, number 9, first up, 9.1, development variance permit for 6102 Austin Street. And I believe our planning technician, Alex Costin, has this.
Good evening, Council. So the district has received an application for variance at 6102 Austin Street. This proposal seeks to vary the maximum allowable height of a retaining wall. The subject property is a corner lot in the Lower Town neighborhood of Summerland. Currently, the property has a single detached dwelling sited on it. The applicant has applied for a development variance permit in 2020 to allow for a relaxed setback requirements in order to facilitate the construction of an attached garage and deck extension. However, the application was put on hold at the request of the applicant. Revised plans were recently submitted, and the applicant is now requesting a variance to the zoning bylaw in order to facilitate the construction of an overheight retaining wall along the exterior side property line. The proposed retaining wall is intended to provide stability for a future detached garage. In the OCP, the future land use designation of the subject property is low density residential, and it is zoned RSD1, residential medium lot. These land uses are consistent with neighboring parcels. Section 5.5.4 of the zoning bylaw limits the maximum height of any retaining wall in the district to 2 meters. The intent behind this 2-meter maximum height regulation is to prevent the construction of imposing monolithic walls that would fundamentally alter the character of a neighborhood and have visual impacts on neighboring parcels. Due to the elevated nature of the subject property, a retaining wall is already present along the south property line and partially along the east property line, acting to retain the existing home. The east wall does not continue the entire east property line. At one time, an access easement was in place prohibiting this construction. This easement is now no longer required and has been discharged. The applicant is proposing to expand the existing retaining wall at a maximum height of 3.2 meters along the eastern lot line to span the entire length of the east boundary of the property. The rationale for this expansion is to achieve a structurally sound surface to construct a future detached carport and garage. The proposed retaining wall would help backfill and compensate for the elevation difference between the property and Austin Street along the east property line. Although the wall will be highly visible from the street, it is reasonable to allow an expansion given that currently the wall terminates in the middle of the property and the remaining part of the property is retained by plants and loose backfill. A structural design sealed by a professional engineer will be required to address any geotechnical, structural, and stormwater concerns at the time of building permit. The proposed retaining wall variance will allow the property owners to create a safe building pad for a future garage and carport. Additionally, given the presence of the retaining walls on the property, the impact on neighboring parcels and on neighborhood character in general is anticipated to be minimal. As such, the variance is being recommended for approval by staff. Thanks.
Thank you, Alex. Council, do you have any questions? Councillor Holmes.
Yes, thank you. So the existing retaining wall, on the east side what's the height of that one?
I don't know the exact height all the way along the retaining wall, but the applicant is on the line, and I'm wondering if possibly NER could speak to this one.
Yes, at the maximum height, because it's elevated the road, so at the maximum point, which is at the lowest point, just at the corner, it's about 7.5 foot, I believe.
How many meters is that?
I measured it in inches
three.
already.
A little bit less than 3 to 2.5.
So, will that stay as it is, and then there'll be a little bit of a bump up for the new one?
Yes,
Is that the idea?
yes, because we need to match the elevation on the west side, because on the west side we have an access road that goes up the two adjacent properties. And this is where our parking is. So we're coming to our property from the elevated road on the west side. And the purpose of the returning wall is to allow us to have a flat horizontal surface. So we need to match the elevation from the west side to the elevation at the east side. And right there, because of the elevation, it's a bit higher.
Councillor Holmes, do you have any further questions?
I have another question for staff, if I may.
Yep, sure, go ahead.
So this is for, the purpose of this is for a future garage. Wouldn't normally the variance come forward at the same time that the applicant is building a garage, so as to avoid, what happens if the garage is never built, and then there was probably no purpose for this wall, is that correct?
Hey, I can reply to that if it's okay. There is still a purpose for the wall, for the sense that we're going to use it for parking and we need a flat surface. So we might build just a carport, but in any case, we need a parking to be flat. So that's the main reason.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Light. Alex, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I will address one thing, because I did state at the beginning of my presentation that initially there was some variances requested for the garages. So at the time, it was to be an attached garage, which has differing setback requirements. And so at this point, it was proposed on the current site plan we have as a detached garage and carport, which would meet the setback requirements without any further variance.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further questions? Would someone like to bring forward a motion? Councillor Van Elfen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That council authorize issuance of development variance permit DVP 20-035 for a property located at 6102 Austin Street, legally described as Lot 1, District Lot 455, Osoyoos Division EL District Plan KAP 84873, and that a variance to the following sections of zoning bylaw 2000-450 be granted. Maximum retaining wall height, section 5.5.4, to vary maximum height of a retaining wall from 2 meters permitted to 3.2 meters proposed.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Holmes, any further discussion? Councillor Barkwell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was thinking about the purpose of this regulation that was described earlier, and why we would vary from the building bylaws on this. some sort of justification for it. And I have sort of, I guess in my mind anyway, come up with why we might want to vary it. And I think that the building, those height restrictions might be more applicable and easier to adhere to on new construction. Here we have a situation where, obviously the house was built some time ago, and it was, the original wall 7 feet high was already permitted at the time. If they'd started, they might have from scratch, they might have done something different. Here we've got this, it is going to be a long, big wall, which is, what our guidelines say we should be trying to avoid. But I suppose I can support it, given that there isn't a lot of option in this particular situation after the house and yard and everything is already there.
Thank you, Councillor Barkwell. I just have a question for Alex. Can you remind us, will this be visible by many neighbors in the area?
Yeah, so it will be a visible wall. It wraps really around the entire perimeter of the home. Like the existing wall wraps around the entire south property line and probably about at least half of the east property line. So it's currently visible, and yes, it will be more visible. Yeah.
Okay, and we haven't had any concerns raised about the wall to date?
I received no comments from neighbors as a result of this variance proposal.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments before, Councillor Holmes?
Yes, maybe the applicant would plant some vegetation or something along the wall after it's built, to make it more attractive from the street, would be my suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Okay, thank you. Moving on. 9.2, development variance permit for 15604. I think that's Elsie Ave, and that's Alex again.
So the district has received an application for variance at 15604 LC Ave. The proposal seeks to vary the minimum required interior side setback. I do want to address one point before I enter into the presentation. As part of the submission documents, the rationale document does state an incorrect fact that previous variances have been issued on LC Ave for setback reductions, and I just want to clarify that point is not correct. We have not issued any development variance permits to reduce setbacks along LC Ave aside from the subject property to allow the existing home on that subject property to remain within proximity. It is. Yeah. So the subject lot is a small residential lot near Lower Town in Summerland. It is currently zoned agricultural small acreage. The applicant is proposing to construct an attached garage containing a secondary suite in the rear yard. The proposed addition will require a variance to the prescribed interior side setback. In the OCP, the future land use designation of the subject property is agricultural, and it is zoned A1 agricultural small acreage. These land uses are consistent with neighboring parcels. The applicant is requesting a variance to section 8.1.6A3 of the zoning bylaw to reduce the minimum required rear setback for principal and accessory buildings from 4 meters to 1.5 meters. This setback reduction would allow the property owners to construct a 2-story garage with a secondary suite. The proposed 3-bay garage would improve the homeowner's ability to contain vehicles in a tidy manner on the subject property. The subject property is currently designated as A1 agricultural small acreage despite the parcel size being small and a similar size to a residential lot, and is located outside of the agricultural land reserve, and the current use is only residential. The A1 zone requires significantly greater setback requirements between structures and adjacent property lines. The minimum interior side setback requirement for A1 is 4 meters compared to 1.5 meters for rural or urban residential zones. The intent of these larger setbacks within agricultural zones is to provide physical separation and to reduce potential conflict between adjacent agricultural uses. There are currently no agricultural uses occurring on adjacent properties, as these parcels are primarily being used for residential uses only. Further, the surrounding neighborhood along LC Ave is of residential character. The proposed building will be consistent with the character. Given these factors, it is reasonable to consider a standard rural or urban residential setback of 1.5 meters to be appropriate for the siting of this structure. The location of the garage suite could be moved to meet the 4-meter side yard setback requirement. However, the applicants are looking to retain as much space as possible for the driveway area. In conclusion, the variance is being recommended for approval by staff due to its limited impact on adjacent landowners and overall neighborhood character. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Council, do you have any questions? Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. Could you tell me, so the size of the secondary suite would be 83 square meters, but would you know the height, what the proposed height is? And could you tell me what the size and height of the existing house is?
Yeah, so I'm not aware of the actual height of the existing home on the property. I'm not sure. The applicant is. Okay, no worries. So the proposed garage will be no greater than 9.5 meters to 2 stories, which is the maximum allowable height. Yeah.
Follow up, if I may. So I seem to remember that not so long ago, we made some changes to our bylaws so that a secondary suite couldn't be higher than the primary residence. And so does that not apply in this case? Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Holmes, it would if we were to consider this a carriage house. But because it's proposed to be attached to the single family dwelling, it's considered an addition to the single family dwelling and part of the house. And therefore, that's the reason why it's considered a secondary suite as opposed to a carriage house, and fall under our secondary suite regulations instead of our carriage house regulations, which does limit that regulation. Yeah.
Yep, go ahead.
And by the same extension, the 1 hectare policy that we rely on for OBWB funding wouldn't apply for the same reason?
That's correct.
Councillor Carlson, did you have a question?
Just sort of follows up on that. So if this property was zoned residential, RSD1, would it be permitted to have a 6-bay garage on that property? Is there a limit on the size? I guess that's the question. Is there a limit on the size of the garage? And also, why the distinction between a carriage house and a secondary suite? My understanding is a carriage house goes on top of a garage. So I don't know how we can call them 2 different things if, yeah.
Yeah, through your worship, so to answer the first question to Councillor Carlson, sorry, 6 bay. Yeah, there's no limit on the size of a garage in terms of the number of bay doors or what have you, especially given that it's proposed to be attached to the house. Again, it's considered all one building, and from one perspective of our zoning bylaw. there's no limitation for the number of bay doors in that regard. They like the only thing that would come into play is probably site coverage, but I assume they would meet that based on their size of their parcel. And then for your second question, not all carriage houses can be above a garage space. If it was a normally constructed house with a detached garage in the front, with additional bonus bedroom above it, or even a suite above it, in the way it's designed, it would just be considered a secondary suite if we're considering it all as part of one principal dwelling. But we do allow carriage houses to be located above an accessory building if it was separated from the single family dwelling, but this one's not.
Do you have a follow-up? Oh,
Yeah, I guess I do have a follow-up. There's some letters that we've received from the neighbors. One of the concerns is regarding the activity that is perceived to be done. Commercial, perhaps industrial of nature, and I'm wondering if there's any recourse or need to deal with that in a situation like this. Is that something we can even look at right now?
Yeah, I'm not too sure what conversations there has been with the applicant with the proposed intention of the garage, but I'll let Alex chime in on that. But the home occupations are permitted as an accessory use up to a limit. We have certain regulations in place to protect residential areas. We limit the size of accessory buildings. We classify them as class 1 or class 2 or class 3. Class 3, I don't think it would be allowed in this area. I'll have to double check that, but yeah, if class 2 would limit the size, maybe as well limit the ability to use the garage for home occupation up to a certain extent. But there is some rights available to landowners to run a home occupation business in conformance with our zoning bylaw.
corporate officer, if the applicant wishes to speak, can council ask for clarification? If they've got a question, how does that work? Okay. Should we invite the applicant up to speak? I think Brad, he would help clarify too what you were saying, right? Okay. Samuel, is that right? Okay, would you like to come up and speak?
Yeah, to answer your question about whether it's going to be used for a business, the only thing that it would be used for is for my personal projects. Like I work on classic cars and stuff like that, my own cars. The only thing that could be considered close to business related is I would be parking my semi truck inside of it. But I don't like work on other people's trucks or anything like that. That's the other reason it needs to be so high, is to fit the truck in there. So it's not parked in the driveway.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I just have a quick question. Reading the submissions that we received, some people had concerns about water in the area, I guess groundwater and stream water, and then also about sewage. Is that, or a septic system? So are either one of those issues in this area?
So the septic situation on the parcel is currently, speaking with the applicant, the current location of the septic field is not known on the parcel. So we have received a letter from an engineer, stamped from an engineer, communicating that there is adequate room on the parcel, given the subject siting of the buildings, to allow for a new septic system to be installed. and to support not only the home, but the secondary suite. And that was submitted in the last week, and that's why it's not a part of the attachments to the council report. Now, the groundwater issue, I've been to the property, and from my perspective, as a planner, I can't see any groundwater issues. I don't really know what else to say other than that.
Sure, go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, just in terms of, we are aware that there is some low-lying water areas there, and for whatever reason, though, we don't have this part of a watercourse development permit area. It's not designated as a pond or a watercourse or a riparian area. So there's nothing protecting those environmental areas, including within the Mon Ave road right of way. Although we have had a number of complaints in the past for that area of the amount of water leading to vegetation and the need to protect it, but there is no current protections in place.
Is there an existing wetland in that area?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was referring to. I think there is like some sort of ponding occurring outside of the private property to the rear, more in our district road right of way on Mon Ave. Yeah, it's not designated as a formal wetland area.
Okay, thank you. Council, any more questions? Councillor Carlson.
Do you know if the proponent owns the vacant lot beside? Looks like it has used as access. I just wonder if it's all one.
So the neighboring parcel that appears vacant actually has a home under construction on it right now.
Any further questions? Yeah, go ahead.
So
again.
I just asked because if you look at the renderings of where this would go, if they didn't require variance, it would still fit. And so I guess the question is, if we don't issue a variance, they still can build this 6-bay building with a suite which is attached to the house. It just will then be 2.5 meters closer to the middle of the property. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Would someone like to bring forward a motion? Oh. Just hold on one sec, sir. Just hold on, please. Corporate officer?
No, so with an application under, like a land use application under, there are no comments or questions from the public. Or sorry, an application with a statutory requirement. Their opportunity to provide comment was through the letters and submissions that were received and were presented to council up until noon today.
Okay. Unfortunately not. The time to give feedback closed today. Okay, council, can I get a motion on the table, please? Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That council authorize issuance of development variance permit DVP 22-002 for a property located at 15604 Elsie Avenue, legally described as Lot 4, District Lot 455, a so-use division Yale District Plan 1009, and that the variance to the following sections of zoning bylaw 2000-450 be granted. Side interior setback section 8.1.6A3 to vary the minimum side interior yard setback from 4 meters to 1.5 meters proposed.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Councillor Barkwell, thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Barkwell.
Yeah, well, I note that this is a quarter-acre lot, which is much more typical of a RSD1 zoning. And what the applicant is looking for is something that would be permitted under the RSD1 zoning, and that the existing house has a little corner of it that is actually maybe a few inches closer than 1.5 meters already. And from the, it seems like all of the houses along that row were kind of built to that RSD1 standard. So it really looks to me more like the agricultural zoning that it has is a bit of an anomaly, and this is identical to a residential street. And in that case, I would think that the residential setback rules would be more appropriate. So I think I can support the applicant.
Okay, any further comment? Councillor Holmes.
I think in most people's mind, the definition of a secondary suite is something that's inside the house. It's not something on top of a house that's built, that's separated from or that's on top of a garage, separated by a 14-foot breezeway. You know, we've seen other situations in this community where these breezeways are put in basically to circumvent what they wouldn't be able to, you know, not being able to build two separate buildings. And I see this exactly the same. And this is being used to circumvent two policies, you know, two separate policies. And I can't support it. I think if they want to build an extension to the house, then make it an extension, and then they wouldn't need a variance.
Councillor Carlson.
I find myself agreeing with Councillor Holmes, and I do think that we may need to have a conversation about what it means to have a secondary suite and a carriage house and a breezeway and all of these things, because apparently it's certainly not clear, or it's certainly not done in a very proper, doesn't seem to be done the proper way. So thank you very much.
Okay, any further comments? Councillor Barkle.
It seems to me, in response to Councillor Holmes' comments, that the end result is the same. You know, the impact, whether the house, the issue here is the size of a building right across the, right across 1.5 meters from the property line. It's not necessarily the use of it. It could, like was pointed out earlier, you know, they could come and build exactly the same thing within the setbacks, and including a breezeway. So that's not really the issue. I think the issue is how close it is to the property line or not, and whether you can live with that particular aspect of it.
I just have a quick question for Alex again for clarification. The reason for the building being, for the request for the setback, is that to allow more space for vehicles to come into the, I just reread the rationale letter and I didn't really get again why they're asking for it.
Yeah, so yeah, that's the primary purpose, is to have a larger driveway area that facilitates easier turning. That's, I think, that's the main purpose of requesting this variance.
Okay, so if the building was built within the current setbacks, would they still be able to get in, like into their driveway appropriately?
I can only assume so, but I don't have the absolute answer to that question. Yeah, it would really depend on. Yeah, I think the applicant would be best to speak to this if you guys are willing to hear his response.
I think that's okay. Yeah, no, that's okay. Okay, any further comments? Okay, I will call the question then. All in favor? Okay, opposed? Okay, that variance is denied. Okay, moving on, 9.3, March 2022 Development Services Report. And who's got that one? Is it Brad? Do you have that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just wait for the slides to load on this one. Thank you. Okay, I'm before council like I am with every month, to just present on activities from our Development Services Department. I don't have the clicker on me, so just the next slide, please. Thank you. For planning and development applications, March has seen a continued kind of growth in planning and development applications, more leaning towards the rezoning and OCP amendment, as well as subdivision areas, some development permits that are a little bit more form and character related, being submitted in March. Again, the number of applications for variances are down. We've seen 2 tonight, but prior to that, we've only had a total of 3 so far in 2022, which is down from this year, from past years. Even March 2021, we had a total of 10 variances provided to the district council by this time last year. This indicates that perhaps our amendments to our zoning bylaw are working to reduce the number of variances being brought forward. But we are still seeing a higher level amount of rezoning and subdivision applications being brought forward. I do want to mention as well on this slide too, we've had a significant uptick in just the number of pre-application inquiries and development project inquiries within the last, I would say the last month in particular, maybe month and a half. So especially for some larger scale developments potentially coming to the District of Summerland. So it's exciting to see that there's a lot of developer interest in our community right now. I'm hopeful that some of these applications will be proceeding to council in the near future in the form of formal applications, but for right now, it's a lot of activity and a lot of meetings with potential development ideas with some developers in our community. Next slide, please. For building permits, we've issued a total of 13 building permits in March, a total construction value of $1.569 million. This is a bit of a slowdown from February. February was actually a quite significant amount of growth, and we had a $4.4 million in construction value. But in overall, over the past 3 months of 2022, we're ahead of kind of the average for the past 4 years at $10.498 million in construction value. Total permits are on average for 47 building permits issued so far this year. Next slide. For bylaw enforcement, here's just a year-to-year comparison of where we are with regards to 2021 versus 2022 in terms of complaints submitted. You definitely can see that the Good Neighbor bylaw, we are getting a lot more complaints submitted under that new bylaw that was adopted by council last year. Next slide again, thank you. And just in relation to March, specifically, we have a total of 67 enforcement files, an increase from the monthly totals that we had in January, February, respectively, of 28 and 30 complaints. We attribute this increase to the improving weather that's generated a lot of more of those Good Neighbor bylaw complaints. As the warm weather melted the snow, we had more complaints being submitted for untidy and unsightly premises and other issues within the Good Neighbor bylaw. And so we've received 18 Good Neighbor bylaw complaints in March alone, which is more significantly higher than in both February and January even combined. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions on development activities report.
Councillor Barkwell.
What sort of investigation would involve the electrical regulations?
Yeah, I think this question has come up in a report before for those stats. I'll have to dig in more specifically where those came from. I believe that this is before we had the meter tech. This is oh no, that's new reg, so never mind. I thought I was looking at historical data. Sometimes our bylaw enforcement staff does help, I believe, with shut-off times that are required if people are not paying their bills. They sometimes help the finance department in incentivizing people to get up to speed with their payments. But yes, that's right. They go door to door and they serve notices, and sometimes a uniform presence helps. At least we've found in our practice. So that could be tracked as that as a separate file.
Any further questions? Councillor Van Alphen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Under fire life safety, I see we've got quite an increase in that. What's that entail? Is this just like open burning, or can you elaborate?
Yeah, I'm not too sure on that one, actually. It could be. I see we've got 3 complaints there. I'd have to get back to you, Councillor Van Alphen, and chat with Dan Maya as to what exactly that was for with regards to. Yeah, no worries.
Okay, seeing no further questions, would someone like to bring this forward? It's to be received for information. Councillor Van Alphen, Councillor Holmes, any further comments? All in favor? Great, carried, thank you. Okay, moving on to number 10, bylaws for adoption. Zoning bylaw amendment, bylaw administrative update, bylaw number 2022-009. Is that corporate officer? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Trainer. Sorry, I just lost my, sorry. Bylaw number 2022-009 received first and second reading at the March 14th regular council meeting. A public hearing was held at the March 11th, with third reading subsequently provided after, and this bylaw is now ready for adoption.
Okay, can I have somebody bring that forward? Councillor Van Alphen, seconded by Councillor Holmes. All in favor? Okay, carried, thank you. Okay, moving on, business arising from the committee of the whole meeting and closed sessions. Corporate officer, she's nodding no. All right, moving on. Okay, next is notice of motion. So Mayor Boot did have one in the agenda, but she has requested that we have a resolution to defer this to May 9th. So I'm wondering if a council can bring that forward. Councillor Van Alphen, Councillor Holmes, all in favor? Okay, so her notice of motion will be moved to May 9th. Okay. All right, moving on to number 13, information items. Is there any items in the correspondence that council would like to bring forward? No, okay, there is one item, Moose Hide campaign. Mayor Boot did want to discuss that, so we will have that on our agenda on May 9th again so that she can bring that forward, okay? And there's, committee minutes. So 13.2 committee minutes, commission minutes. There's the Water Advisory Committee from March 3rd, 2022. We don't need to vote on that. It just, receive for information. Okay, can I get a mover? Thank you, Van Alphen and Councillor Holmes. All right, all in favor? Great, thank you. Okay, on to councillor reports. So starting with Councillor Barkwell. Okay, Councillor Carlson.
I don't have anything to report, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Holmes.
No, thank you. I just wanted to say that the Housing on Agricultural Property workshop was really well run, and it was a good discussion, I thought, and I look forward to the report coming to council in the due course. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And Councillor Van Alphen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not a lot to report. I was just very fortunate Saturday night to attend a wonderful play at Summerland Secondary School called Spam-A-Lot. And if you get the opportunity to go, it was a lot of fun. And kudos to the crew that put that on. They did a wonderful job. Thank you.
Great. It's nice to be back after COVID and being together and being able to see live performances like that. For me, I attended, along with Councillor Holmes, the RDOS meeting on April 21st, and I will have a report for council ready later this week. Okay, so number 15, public and media comment period. Do we have any media that wanted to speak? No? Okay, do we have anyone from the public that wants to speak? Yes, you are. You have 2 minutes. If you could just state your name and your civic address for the record.
Samuel Wild, 15604 Elsie Avenue. I don't know if this is the right area to bring up this question, but I'm aware that one or more members of council has a close relationship with one of our neighbors who is opposed to our building of our garage. So I don't know if there's a way to re-vote on this subject and have that member recuse themselves. But that's my only comment.
Okay, thank you. CAO, can you help with that one at all?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Council members are responsible under legislation to identify their own conflicts. It's discretionary based on the facts they know and the relationships they have. No conflicts were identified in the course of decision making tonight. However, if the gentleman has specific facts or items that he'd like to relay, that can always be sent in correspondence to our corporate officer, Kendra Kinsley, and we can exchange information after the meeting.
Okay, and in terms of Mr. Wild's proposed development, he could also go back to development services for further help if he required it. Is that correct?
In terms of alternative ways of building that development, yeah, development services is always there to answer any questions that they may have, and they have the contact information for them.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so seeing no other people wanting to speak, I will call for an adjournment. At 6:56, Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Holmes, all in favor? Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.